As regular listeners to our podcast might well know, before retirement, I worked as an operations director in the pharmaceutical industry, managing what I used to call the lumpy stuff, manufacturing operations, packaging, labs, warehousing, engineering department, maintenance, all that kind of stuff. As the senior guy, I was often expected to have all the answers to a multitude of day-to-day problems and challenges. And from time to time, when people come and ask me for a solution to a problem, probably when I wasn't on one of my better days, um, I'd put my hand in my pocket and pull out my fist and open my hand to reveal nothing. And then I would declare, shucks, it looks like I'm darn out of pixie dust. We're just going to have to get to work and figure this out. Well, one of the chapters in today's book is actually called Pixie Dust for the same reason. The reason being there ain't no magic solution, basically, except in the book today, it's applied to running. All that says really is we can't sprinkle fairy dust on things. You got to do the work. So hi and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review books written for runners, about runners and by runners to help you decide if you'd like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running and maybe inspire you to try something new or different. My name's Alan, and with my co-host Cheyenne, we're going to talk today with Lyle Smith about his book, Blood, Sweat and Spikes.
In the running boom of the 80s, the small town of Bernardsville, New Jersey, emerged as champions at all levels of distance running. The young, passionate, experimental coach of the junior program, feeding a lot of success, was Mark Wetmore, before he became one of the world's best collegiate coaches. Blood, Sweat, and Spikes is a story of one of those runners in that town, Lyle Smith, who's our guest today, and the people that made it unique in the history of the sport. Lyle Smith has been a reporter, a caddie, a gravedigger, a marketing professional, and a runner since he discovered the sport as a youngster growing up in Bernardsville, New Jersey. He now lives in Colorado with his wife Heather and son Aiden. You might hear him podcasting or see him running the trails of Boulder with his golden retriever Elsa. Welcome, Lyle. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much, fellas. I appreciate you having me on.
We love having you on, and we right away want to ask, why'd you decide to write this book? It was a thrill to read.
Well, this is it's funny. It's running has been a major part of my life from a very young age, and the experience from beginning running as a junior age group runner, right on up through college and beyond, injuries, meeting people, knowing people, getting to know people. Over all that time has been sort of a cornerstone of sort of the way I think. Anyway, it's become sort of it's really impacted the way I think about the world. That experience, not the least of which is my coach growing up, turned out to be one of the foremost, best known, most successful coaches in American history. Anyway, I always had this story idea in my head that I wanted to get down on paper. And I've been a writer pretty much my whole adult life anyway, and I've made my living as a marketing writer. But I've written plays, I've written stories, I've written all kinds of stuff over the years, and I just had this in my head and always wanted to kind of get it out, and it never seemed the right time until we moved out here to Colorado, and I had, an hour and a half or 2 hours every morning after I dropped my son off for cross country practice to scribble in a notebook, and that's what produced the book.
Pretty cool. I think most
Yeah.
most of us here have heard of Mark Wetmore, and maybe most of our listeners have heard of some of his exploits. In particular, the book Running with the Buffaloes, which was this time in a sort of famous sphere dealing with the guys at Colorado University and their Olympic type standards. Adam Goucher being the famous one, I think, out
Right.
of that group. So is this kind of, in many ways, sort of a prequel? It's a bit like Star Wars, they did
I hope it's better than the Star
they
Wars
did the
prequels, but yeah, it kind of is, and it's really funny because I'm quite familiar with I have it here somewhere, Running with the Buffaloes. I know Chris Lear, the author, who actually he's also from New Jersey. He ran at Princeton, and in high school, he broke my state meet record in the 1600 meters. And so I know Chris a bit, and that book is structured more like a journal almost. Like, here's the days we trained, here's what we did, and it kind of gathers the story up into a calendar
Mhm.
chronological year of training with the team. And mine mine kind of wanders around a bit in time.
Yeah,
But it seemed
we
to
noticed.
it seemed to fit what I was trying to do. And because I didn't want to hit, because I felt like I had multiple peaks, and I didn't want
Yeah,
to hit them all at the same time.
yeah,
So at any rate, yeah, a prequel. I mean, it's sort of a prequel. It's so Mark Wetmore was he's best known as the head coach of the University of Colorado for about almost 30 years. Multiple NCAA championships. He was the first coach to have both the men's and women's teams win the NCAA championships in the same year. His teams have won the individual championship and the team championship in cross country multiple times. He's had something like 200 All-Americans, and multiple Olympians and world championship performances, world championship team performances in track and cross country. So he has this big, you know, uh, reputation as a coach, as a college coach.
mhm,
But what a lot of people don't know, if you're outside of the New Jersey realm, is he had a whole career back in New Jersey before he moved out here to Colorado as a coach. So he coached us age group kids when I was, he coached me from the age of 10 or 11. Um, and had a club called the Mine Mountain Road Department that we all kind of came up in this little tiny town called Bernardsville, a population at that time about 6,000. And then he ended up coaching at Bernards High School, which was a high school of only about 600 kids. So that over the years with him as a coach and another coach named Ed Mather. The two of them combined for 23 state championships in New Jersey in cross country, and a long list of pretty strong. And he actually coached masters athletes too at that time. So what a lot of people don't know is his coaching background covers almost every level of the sport. Uh, because he went on to coach pros too after they graduated from CU. They would come back and look for a pro coach. So that's his background anyway. And always felt like I was part of something much bigger, a long string of success there in New Jersey. And it was one of the you could argue it was the most successful public school in New Jersey in running. Um, there are a few others that are close or equally as reputed, but that's what it is. And I wanted to make that connection between, you know, because everybody kind of knew what he was, and I kind of wanted to tell my story of where he came from
yeah.
and where I came from and what my experience in the sport was.
Do you take caffeine when you run? Lots of people do because it's in gels and stuff. And caffeine's legal and It's been proven to work. There's actual science that shows that it improves your endurance running performance.
And there's anecdotal data from when you have your coffee in the morning and you go for a workout versus when you forgot to have your coffee or you didn't have time and you went for a workout and it was terrible.
And the trouble with coffee is there's a lot of liquid just to get your caffeine dose.
Yeah, so then you have to stop for the bathroom mid-workout. Very impractical. Which is where Caffeine Bullet comes in.
What's Caffeine Bullet, Liz?
It's it's a caffeine supplement. It's wrapped up like in a candy. So, and it tastes like candy. And you can get 100 milligrams or 85 milligrams, which is about a cup of coffee, but without the liquid.
So we've tried the mint flavor and the chocolate orange flavor. They're both pretty yummy.
If you want to try them for yourself, we do have a 20% off discount code. So go to the link in the show notes and you can check out what Caffeine Bullet is and get your 20% discount.
Pretty generous.
It is pretty generous.
And we'll get a small benefit, so you're helping out the
Speaking of which, back to the podcast.
And did you go to the school because you were a runner, or did you become a runner because you happened to be at the school?
This is an interesting question, Alan, because I don't know how it works in Canada. I don't know how it works in Britain, but in at least in New Jersey, and every state's a little bit different. In those days, you went to the school that was in the town.
Yeah, in
you
your
lived in.
catchment area. Yeah.
Yeah. And, there were some schools where you could, if they had a specialty or whatever, that's more of a thing now than it was then. And for years, we used to get, Bernards High School used to get accused of recruiting these kids into school to have such a great cross country team and a great track team and all this stuff. And it's really funny because it's a little public school. It's not like it didn't have any budget for this.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have, if you lived in town, you could go to school there. And so, I mean, even to this day, I run into people who are absolutely sure I got recruited into Bernardsville to go to school there. And I have to disappoint them and tell them I was 4 years old when we moved there. So if I got recruited, somebody knew something very early on.
And before we get too far away from your sort of childhood and school, is that the skinny little lanky kid on the front of the book?
Yep, that's me.
Is that you in Mine Mountain?
That's a mine, and
Mine Mountain Road
this is
Department
audio.
singlet?
This is audio, correct? So
Yeah.
I'll show the hosts this.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
There's one of them right there.
Yeah.
So I still have my Mine Mountain Road Department singlet, which was
made out of that new high-tech material.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Called cotton. The young runners like Shan have never heard of it.
Yeah, it's true. It's so that's another interesting, fun little story. Mark Wetmore sort of created this club. We needed our town recreation commission had a run for fun program. So all the kids from very young on up to maybe junior high school could come out, because in those days they didn't really have junior high school teams. You would run as a club. And so, the kids would come out, and Ed Mather, who was the head coach of the high school at that time, would do a little dog and pony show in the high school auditorium and try and get kids interested in coming out to run. He had some success, and so people were excited to be part of anything that's successful. So some of the kids wanted to come out, and what's this weird oval thing with lane lines painted on it, and what are those big mats in the corner? And so all the kids got to run around the track and run shuttle relays and jump in the long jump pit and jump in the high jump pit and try and pick up a shot put and all this other stuff. Basically, just get introduced to the whole sport. And so that guy, Ed Mather, I refer to him as sort of the P.T. Barnum of track and field. He had a knack for getting kids excited about being part of this thing. And Mark, when he returned from college, his first degree, he coached some of those kids, and then eventually that recreation commission thing became the club. And so a lot of the kids started showing up to practice, and we'd practice all summer. And, we might have 50 or 60 people. So kids, boys and girls, some high school kids, some of the college kids came back. Some of their parents would come out in the summertime in the afternoon and meet at this corner of the property, the school property we called the wall, because there was
A
a
wall.
wall. And, we were very inventive in naming things in those days. And we might have 40, 50, 60 people go out for a run together, different distances, different paces. And so there was this whole community that grew around this team. And Mine Mountain Road was one of the big hills we used to train on. Most of our courses went on part of that road at one point or another. And so rather than this will give you a little glimpse into Mark Wetmore. Rather than name it the Bernardsville Striders
Hmm.
or the Somerset Hills Harriers or something
Yeah.
like that, he thought, well, we need something unique. So he called it the Mine Mountain Road Department. And everybody thought it was like the department that fixed the roads.
Yeah.
And and he made a singlet. I'm gonna grab this here. That was bright yellow, and his mother was a graphic designer, so she designed this sort of
The lettering.
M
Oh, yes.
twin M runners on the middle, and on the back, because it was the Mine Mountain Road Department and everybody was confused, we put a big orange triangle
Triangle.
for slow moving vehicles. So, and that was all Wetmore's doing, all his
Yeah.
inventiveness. And he
Yeah.
was, back in those, he was silk screening them in his basement and stuff like that. So that gives you a little glimpse into his reputation is as something very serious and very stoic
Yes.
and but when you get to know him, the one thing the one thing everybody says when they first meet him and talk to him is like, he's a lot funnier than I thought he was.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's because you didn't get a chance to talk to him yet. That's all.
I think we see that in the book.
Yeah.
He injects fun into the excruciating training that he might put you through.
Abs Absolutely. Absolutely.
Before I jump actually to the workouts, because the workouts are such a big topic of our conversation
Mhm.
later on. They're very intriguing. Before I get there, might be early on when you first met Mark Wetmore. There was this
Mhm.
race. I think it was a Bernards Invitational. Was that maybe the first time you ran under Mark Wetmore? Am I getting that correct?
Well, we had run again, you come up, I had run in the Run for Fun program. So we ran some like recreation commission track meets and things, but everything was sort of a relay and it was
Mhm.
all for fun. And the uniforms were not really a thing. And it was like a bunch of kids running around a field is really how that all happened. And then I got, um, a little bit older and the Mine Mountain Road Department became a thing and I was a member and I had a singlet and the whole bit. And we were getting ready for the Bernards Invitational, which was a couple of weeks out. And I was at school one day and a friend said, "Hey, are you ready for the race today?" And I just like my eyes twirled
Lost
around in
it.
my head.
Yeah.
And I was like, what race? What are you talking about? I don't know. Yeah. And I ran home scared because it was just like, so I'm 10 years old, maybe. And I
Terrifying
ran
prospect.
just absolutely terrified of the whole thing. I had run some races before, so it didn't really, there was no logic to any of it, like most
Mhm.
scary things. And, and so they were having sort of a small meet where they had a couple of schools came in buses to run a junior cross country meet at our place called the Polo Grounds, which is I still to this day don't know if they ever played polo there, but that's what they called it. And uh, so Mark, who was running the meet, he was the meet director of this small meet. And he got in he had a white van and he got in his van and drove down to my house and met me. And my mom kind of forced me out to go talk to him. And I sat in his van and we chit chatted a little bit. And he just convinced me that I had done the work. I had done the training. There's a whole bunch of other people there waiting, for me and everybody else to be there to race. And somehow or another, he convinced me that I was ready to go. And so we drove back up to the starting line, and that was the beginning of it. And then the Berners Invitational was a couple of weeks later, which was a much bigger meet, and I was sort of mentally prepared for that. And the other one kind of snuck up on me. And but he had this way of just kind of, connecting with athletes and young people, and that convinced you were absolutely ready to do what you needed to do. And that's I think that's invaluable as a coach.
Could you tell us about that way? Like what did, and you mentioned, of course, he reminded you of your training. He brought you back to the work you've done and reminded you of the things. But what else did he do to instill that confidence?
Well, honestly, you're a 10-year-old kid and you're petrified. So you're crying, you're upset, you're hyperventilating. And he somehow got me to calm down enough to hear him say, and he meant this is a, because everybody's looking for a secret, right? And if I were to, there's a couple of things. If I were to apply a secret to any of this, this is one of them. And because there were older kids who were training, and I hadn't trained with them. I was still younger and newer, green, and but I knew them all, and I knew how well they'd done, and I knew their reputations, and I was so, they were like, it was like watching the Yankees practice. It's like watching the Yankees take batting practice. And so he said, how many of those boys, especially, how many of those boys do you think I've had in that seat having this same exact conversation? And I just kind of shook my head, and he led me to believe it was all of them. And whether it was or wasn't, it was one of those things that, got me to not just calm down, but feel confident that, well, if they were there and they're doing so well, why can't I? And
makes
so
you feel bigger than you, doesn't it?
It is bigger than you. You're part of something. That's the whole thing, is you feel bigger than something. You feel part of something bigger than yourself.
Wow.
And that was extraordinary and invaluable, and something I try to impress upon my son, because those are the things when you're worried about things, and you can kind of get convinced in your own head that it's been done before. You're not the only one. It's you've done all the same work, so you should be able to get the same kind of result. That builds confidence, inside you. And so that was my first real race. And I ended up finishing fourth in this sort of unnamed cross country race at the Polo Grounds. And it instills enough confidence to come back and do it again.
Yeah, I think reading the book, it felt like it was a sort of sliding doors moment, in that you could have had that reaction, run away, and then you'd have had a mountain to climb to get back to your next event.
Exactly right. Or just never come back.
Yeah, and then it becomes more difficult.
Risk you're running.
Everyone where you don't turn up, then it's harder to turn up for the next one.
Exactly right.
I always say it's a bit like when you meet someone and you've forgotten their name, and you don't ask them their name. And now it's quite difficult. You're 3 minutes into the conversation and you're still talking with them, and you can't really ask the name there. And it's like, you should have done it the first time.
That's right. And they clearly remember your name.
Clear the whole thing up, nip it in the bud early on, and get back on the right track.
Right.
One of the books that I've read for my sins of being a podcaster on running book reviews is the Villanova story, the Villanova track story, which covers all the history. You're looking around. You probably. I see you've got a Villanova.
Lyle has streets in his background. He just has singlets and books and
Mr.
sweaters. And...
For the record, I have not read this yet. It's been sitting here on my shelf.
Spoke with Mr. Boomer.
This is the Villanova track story in your hand right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, that's the Villanova
Nice.
track
I've
story with
I've
Dave
forgotten his
Patrick on the cover.
I've forgotten his first name, but Boom,
We
Boom
just talked about that.
Jerry Booma.
Jerry Boomer. There we go.
Yeah, I have not read it yet, but it's on my
Jerry
list.
Boomer is the author.
A friend, here's a full circle moment for you. This arrived in my mailbox last summer after a handful of my old Villanova, no, I'm sorry, my old Bernards High School friends,
Yeah.
who were several years ahead of, maybe 8 years older than me, came out to visit Mark Wetmore, and we went hiking and had dinner and all that stuff, and my friend John Sullivan said, "Oh, have you ever read that Villanova storybook?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And next thing I know, it shows up in my mailbox.
What a friend.
There you go.
So it's on my short list of things to read,
There you
but
go.
I haven't gotten to it yet.
Oh, but by the way, Cheyenne, I really wouldn't mind driving a Porsche. So, thought I'd just drop that into the conversation.
I got you.
Yeah. Okay. So
when they have an 1895 Porsche, there you go.
I'm segueing a little bit, trying to the Villanova track story, because Villanova are famous in particular for one achievement, and that is winning the Penn relays. And I guess that's the sort of the Penn relays at the adult elite level, but in fact Penn relays occur at several levels, don't they? At junior levels and
Yeah, I mean it's truly it's mostly a college meet.
yeah.
So and they call the fast heat of the relays are each called the Championship of America. Because they go back far enough, they 1895, I guess, is when the first Penn relays was. And so they get to carry that banner. And but they have pro races. It's 3 days, last weekend in April in Philadelphia every year. And they have pro races, they have a lot of college races, they have a ton of high school races, and they also have high school championships of America too. So the fast heats in the distance medley, the 4x800, the 4x400, the 4x100, the shuttle hurdles, all that stuff. They have field event relays too, and the championship heats of all of those are the Championship of America for high schoolers. And for years they've had and they go right down to junior, like, age group races. I remember them having masters relays, and they had one of my favorites was the Philadelphia media relay.
Oh,
so they had all the sports writers went out and ran a mile relay, and it was hysterical. It was so much fun.
But generally, to get to these things, it's sort of a national. You've got to be at sort of national class. It's extremely prestigious.
I mean, I guess it's technically an invitational, but it's like they invite all the fastest teams.
Yeah.
And so we had a chance. My high school had a chance to run there numerous times, and we did very well a handful of times.
And you ran in one of the legs of the distance medley relay.
The distance medley relay when I was a sophomore.
For our listeners, you could just tell us what a distance medley relay is.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We know 4x4 and we know about 4x1 because we see those in the Olympics, but distance medley, maybe people don't know what one of those is.
Yeah, the distance medley. I forget when I learned what the distance medley was, but I remember seeing my first distance medley. I was a freshman, ninth grader in high school, and we went to watch the Penn relays. And we got to see the distance medley run live and in person. So, they have medley relays in swimming. The idea is each of the four athletes in the relay runs a different distance. So, and they have a sprint medley as well. So the distance medley is there's a 400-meter runner, an 800-meter runner, a 1200-meter runner, and the anchor leg is a 1600 meters. But they start, sometimes they start with the 800, sometimes they start with the 1200. At Penn, they start with the 1200. So your leadoff man goes 3 laps, your second man goes 1 lap, Your third man goes 2 laps, and your anchor man is the miler. And so fortunately, I was on our team. My high school won it in 1979, so before me.
Wow.
And then we went again. We're a tiny school, right? We're a little tiny school in a little tiny town in New Jersey. And we came back, my high school. Um, I'll skip over 83 for a moment, but 1984, I was a sophomore, a 10th grader in high school. I ran the leadoff leg. I ran the 1200-meter leg, and we won. And then we came back again we ran it when I was a junior, but that's a whole nother story. And then we ran it again when I was a senior, 12th grader in high school. And I was the anchor leg that year, and we won that year as well, in 10:06, both of those years. And my ninth grade year, my freshman year, we went to watch. That was my first experience with the Penn Relays, and we had a team that went. They had set the national record indoors in the wintertime, and so they were kind of a favorite coming into the Penn Relays, and they ran 10 flat .9 to be the closest team to ever breaking 10 minutes in high school. But they finished second in a dead heat to Willingboro High School in South Jersey. And our anchor man ran 4:06, and their anchor man ran 4:08. And they still talk about that race today down there in Philadelphia. It was a hell of a race. So so anyway, but there's so many different races there, and if they call it the university because it's at the University of Pennsylvania, hence
Yeah.
Penn. So it's the University of Pennsylvania Relay Carnival, annual Relay Carnival. And if you get a chance, if you haven't been there, if you've been there, you'll know this. If you haven't been there, it really feels like a carnival, because it's in Franklin Field, which is a stadium that holds, God, it must hold 60,000 or more. For the Saturday at the Penn Relays, it'll hold 40,000 plus. Which most track runners don't get a chance to run in front of. And
yeah, this is Diamond League size.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it's 3 days, and so you have all kinds of different levels of high school heats competing against each other. They have, in addition to the championship heat, they have the suburban high schools division. They have the Philadelphia City high schools division, and then the fastest of all those teams in the mile relay, the 4x400, qualify for the final on Saturday. And it's just, and there's food, and there's a smell of funnel cake and hot dogs, and people cheering and singing, and outside the walls of the stadium, it's this big brick stadium, and outside the walls of the stadium there are tents selling T-shirts and you name it, and people singing and playing music and bands, and it really is a festival. It's a totally unique event. If every track meet in America had some aspect of this, they wouldn't have an empty seat. It's just so much fun.
Yeah.
And so you went from the scared little kid who ran away at 10 years old to entering the arena of 40,000 attentive parents and participants, and
As an anchor leg, no less.
As an anchor leg, yeah.
as an anchor leg, what
Yeah.
what was that, like 2 years later or 3 years later?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's funny, and I tell this story in the book. There, when I was a sophomore, when I was 10th grade, I go in. This is my first time running a big meet like this, and they put you in a little. They use horse racing terminology, so they line all the teams up, because every race has a series. It's not just a series of participants in that race. It's 4 participants for each race. So you have to line up 4 together, and then they separate you and put each leg out at the right time. And it's the organization is rather extraordinary. And so they put you in this place called the paddock, which, if you know, horse racing
Yeah.
is a thing. That's where you put the horses before you take them out to the track to race, and
Hmm.
it's the same thing. And so I'm standing there, and we strip down out of our sweats down to our racing gear. We put our spikes on. We click up onto the track, and I was sort of afraid to look up because there were so many people in the stands, and I'd never experienced anything like that. And I took a peek, and I was a little nervous. And then some guy in the stands started shouting out my name, and I looked up, and it was this enormous 300 plus pound guy in a bright red shirt and a baseball cap, and I'm like, who is this guy? And he cheered something to me like, "Hey, Smitty!" And nobody called me Smitty. My grandfather was Smitty, And I'm like, "Who is this guy? I don't know." And then before I knew it, I was on the starting line, and they were firing the gun, and the race was off. So that was really sort of a happy circumstance to avoid a lot of sort of nervous thinking.
Hmm.
And but that experience of getting out there and running in front of all those people was overwhelming. It really was. It was exciting. It was scary. But again, you fall back on a few things that your coach tells you. Mark always used to say things like, you've done the work. Now you have a job to do. And that was it. And it wasn't not a lot of, pep talk, not a lot of, halftime football, rah, rah, locker room speeches. It's just, look, just remind you that you're ready for this. Go get it. And so we did. And that was it was very, very businesslike in a lot of ways. And that was really very helpful. But it's very overwhelming. And I would, the people I know who I've talked to about it all say the same thing. And I bet anybody you talk to who said the first time they ran at a place like that would say the same thing. They're just like, it's just, your eyes go blank because it's just so much. A high school track meet doesn't get that many
No.
that many fans.
And traditionally, the pen reelers give you a watch if you win.
Oh yeah, this is the other fun thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
when you win a championship, you don't get a medal. They give watches, and I'm looking. I don't have it here. I would show you. It's a Hamilton. They've given out Hamiltons for years. I don't know. I think it's an American-made watch, but instead of the numbers around the dial 1 through 12, it spells out Pennsylvania,
Okay.
Oh,
and then it says relays,
wow.
and then it says relays across the face, and so it's a totally unique. It's a gold watch with a gold band. I put a leather band on mine because I wear it more that way, but it's they give out, the team gets, it's a big, a lot of people call it a wheel. It looks sort of like, they pretend like it's a wagon wheel,
Hmm.
but it's a big, about the size of a bicycle wheel, with a medallion on it and a little engraved thing for the race that you won, and that's your championship plaque that goes back to the school,
Yeah.
and then each member of the team gets a watch. And so it was, yeah, it's a unique experience to end up on top there.
It's truly part of the lore of athletics as a whole in America,
Mm.
and most especially as an outsider from Canada, we might think, well, it's just something high schoolers look up to and try to reach and achieve. But if you're thinking about this from the age of 10 or from the age of 12, or middle school, high school, junior school running, it's an incredible thing to dream about doing. And
Right.
I don't know how a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old can imagine running in front of a crowd of 60,000 people in this stadium that has so much lore. We're talking Hayward Field.
Right.
We're talking these big accomplishments. How does that? I know the Wetmore factor is the Wetmore factor. He prepared you the way he does, and there's no
Yeah.
pixie dust sometimes. But
Yeah.
how does someone prepare you for that mentally? Is there an extra thing that they do, or it's just everyone's in it together because we're all big something part of something bigger?
The being part of something bigger is a big part of it. So in all the days of training, all those summer days, and
Mhm.
summer's the biggest training period for distance runners, leading into the cross country season, and that carries you through the track season. Um, all those stories, and we're out on the road and we're talking to each other and we're telling, you're a bunch of high school kids running together. You'll talk about girls and you'll talk about movies and you'll talk about, what game did you watch last night? But, and in those days, Mark ran with us a lot until we were at a certain age. He was, because I remember when I started, I as a kid, as a 10 or 11-year-old kid, you're training with this coach and you think, oh, that's this big, Mount Rushmore kind of a figure. Um, when I started writing the book, I sort of realized that, yeah, he was only 25 or 26 when he started training me. So he was
Wow.
still kind of a very young guy himself. So he was out training with us and we all ran together. So while we were out on these long runs, you tell stories, right? And he would tell all kinds of stories about, the kids he went to high school with and the troublemakers and he used to talk about being a gearhead as a teenager. So he was into fast cars and all this other stuff. But a lot of the stories revolved around the great runners we knew, and the great runners we'd met over the years and the great performances we'd seen. And so just sort of understanding all those things and meeting some of those people. Like there's a chapter about a guy named Chris Hallinan who was the best Bernards runner ever in those days, and so we'd hear these stories and then all of a sudden one day at some meet, wait, there's Chris. That's like a real guy. It's not just a
Yeah.
story. And
Comes to
so you get
life.
to meet him and talk to him you go to a meet and watch some of these guys run and they'll show you the medal they got or the watch in that case or whatever, and it just feels, you start to feel like you belong in this kind of rarefied atmosphere. And so there's a confidence
Wow.
that comes with that
Mhm.
that's not imaginary. It's like you really start to feel it, And so when you're and I would bet, because I see it in my son's school. My son goes to Niwot High School out here in Colorado, and they've won the Nike Cross Nationals the last 2 years. They've had some really good runners before then. So they have a tradition, right? And they build on that. And some of those kids come back in the summer and talk to the younger kids. And so you have this. So if you were to talk to, I'll throw out some American school names that may or may not register with you, like CBA in New Jersey, or there's what's the one? There's one where the Mastelier brothers went in Northern California, and but they had this long history of success. And so when you can tie what you're doing to something that somebody else did,
Yeah.
and one other little sort of angle on this is funny because there were a lot of runners in my town, small, like I said, small town, a lot of runners in my town. We had races in town. We had road races. We had a pretty competitive Bernardsville half marathon for a few years. Um, but when we won the Penn Relays, when I was a sophomore in high school, 10th grader, we came back and the lead sports story in my hometown newspaper was Jamie Blair pitching a two-hitter.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So we were the second story,
Yeah,
and
incredible.
I think it's probably because they had a picture for the baseball story and they didn't
Yeah.
have a picture for the track story.
Mm,
But
Mm.
it's like it's a little bit of
absolutely.
a
You're right
adjustment.
there. Yeah,
Keep
absolutely.
humble.
Absolutely. Was it the Jesuit high school? I had looked it up real quick. Was it
Jesuit,
Jesuit?
yeah,
Jesuit high
Jesuit's the
school, yeah.
one. They are, but again, this is another thing too. We see we have a lot of the private schools, a lot of the Catholic schools have, like Christian Brothers Academy in New Jersey is the big one in New Jersey. And
Hmm.
we figured it out one time just by, it's all boys and they have 900 kids, I think. And we had boys and girls and we had 600 from 7th through 12th. So we
Hmm.
were even smaller than
Different.
600, really. And we figured out for every one of our first guy, they should have like four. just
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
statistically. Of course, it doesn't
Absolutely.
work out that way, but
So,
that's
That makes sense.
yeah. So a lot of these schools that have really long histories have really big schools, and they build that tradition on, a lot of kids to choose from and all that stuff, and taking nothing away from them because it's really hard to win a race no matter where you come from. I always felt a certain amount of pride coming from a small place, you know.
Yeah.
So
Shout out to Aiden. I know you mentioned him earlier, and I hope he's listening. I hope he's
now what?
proud of.
Uh,
Yes, and there's a poignant story in there in the book about him, as
yeah.
well as he's living out his sliding doors moments with who he's meeting and
There's a
who he's
massive amount
alongside.
of the massive amount of running legacy in Colorado,
Oh, there's a
Absolutely,
ton.
near
Yeah, there's a ton.
around Boulder. Um,
absolutely, it's legendary.
yeah,
He came up to me the other day because they were running a course. There's a course over here called the Legend Loop. And I don't know why it's called the Legend Loop. I don't know who the legend is, but it's a big hill and they're running up the big hill, the team together. And he came home and he said, "Hey Dad, I got to run with Drew Hunter today." And I said,
Whoa.
"How'd you get to run with Drew Hunter?" Because I know Drew a little bit, but not a lot, and
mm,
as far as I know, he never met Aiden, but they're running up this hill, and Drew Hunter from Asics is training on the same hill, and the on team is training on the same hill. Nagoose is out there, running laps on their same. They train on the same track. So they have an exposure to some really interesting and inspiring kind of
Yeah.
yeah,
connections. It's fun.
We have we joke between ourselves in a running club that we ran on the same course as etc. Like we've had friends who
Right.
ran shout out Joanne and Brian who ran Chicago Marathon on the day it was broken in
Oh, wow.
2023 I believe, rest in
Hmm.
peace Kelvin Kempton, and we joke, you ran after him, you gotta run fast. You always feel like, hey, you're running on the same course, they're running the same
Yeah.
things you're running. But in your experience, Aiden especially, he's running the same workouts, well, not workouts, the workout grounds that he's running. It
Yeah.
just seems like it's rarefied air to be a part of. You don't go in a hockey arena and practice on your ice, and everyone practice on their own ice, or baseball diamonds, etc.
Right.
Everyone's running the same roads. Everyone's running the same.
Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's really neat. And all of them, I mean, everybody he's met, especially, has been nothing but open and friendly and willing to answer questions or just
Hmm.
chit chat or whatever. And it's a lot of fun. It brings that elite level athlete into like a reality, a
yeah,
contrasted
Yeah.
reality. You're like, wait, they're not just on posters and in magazines and on podcasts.
so
They're
Yeah.
real people doing real
yeah,
things, and you can watch them do it, and and they'll talk to me.
Yeah.
It's
I
fun.
want to actually ask you about a moment you had in the book,
Hmm.
where you had your own one of those moments where you had someone from Rarefied Air be right
Mm.
with you. I'm talking about the New York Roadrunners National Youth Meet.
Mm.
You ran it a few times, but you had a
Yep.
sweet duel with one John Troutman,
John Troutman.
John
Yeah.
Troutman, and he would go on for our listeners to set the National High School 3,000 meter record. He
Yep.
made the 1992 Olympic team, and he was part of the team that set the world record at the distance medley relay in Georgetown. You raced him, you wrote a thrilling piece about him. I just want to give you the floor. Tell us about what you remember from the race. How was that in a sliding doors moment of running with him?
Yeah. Well, this is really interesting because we used to go to Van Cortlandt Park, which is in American, at least East Coast American cross country history is kind of a mecca for cross country running. So Van Cortlandt Park was an old estate back in the 1600s, and over the years it became a massive public playground, basically. So there are softball fields and baseball fields and football fields and all that. But then you go there and you realize, wait, all of a sudden you realize how much of an immigrant society we live in. There are hurling fields and Gaelic football leagues that play there and cricket clubs that play there. But over the years, it has been a great a variety of different distance cross country courses there too. So they've had Manhattan College is right above it in the hills, right above, and it's in the Bronx in New York City. So it's this odd combination of inner city and
Mhm.
um, countryside. It's a really strange. It's such a cool place to go when you're a kid because it's so different from anything you've ever seen before. And they had the New York Roadrunners Club held their version of a national cross country championship there every fall. And so my coach, Mark Wetmore, would take a club of us there, and we'd run the different age group races. And for a few years in a row, I ran there was the 3,000 meter race, which was for our age. I don't know if we were the midget boys or the youth boys or whatever we were. And one race in particular, this was the first time we had run up Cemetery Hill, famed Cemetery Hill in Van Cortlandt Park, where there is actually a cemetery. It was the Van Cortlandt family cemetery. And so the trail runs right by it. And so I'm racing and I have, you know, this is a couple of years in, and I have a certain amount of confidence going into this race. And I'm like, I think I can take this race. This is my race. And so the gun goes off, and we run across the field and up into the path. And I make a U-turn and go up the steep cemetery hill. And I'm leading. And then all of a sudden, I'm not leading. And this other guy goes by me pretty easily. And I'm thinking, coming from Bernardsville, New Jersey, with all our hills, it's like this
This is
guy's
this is your turf.
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
working too hard. There's no way he can keep this up.
Yeah.
And I said something under my breath like, you're gonna die. Like that's my thought. So my thought escaped my lips. And he goes, and then we get to the crest of the hill and come over and start going back down to the main parade ground, which is where the finish line is. And he's not coming back to me. And I'm like, wait a second, this isn't right. And we get down, and Van Cortlandt is famous for like the last 800 meters is downhill onto a big flat, and then it's dead flat to the finish line. So all the track guys love the finish of the Van Cortlandt races because it feels like a track race, and you're running on like a cinder kind of a surface.
Mm.
And so I'm like, okay, no problem, I'll get him, I'll get him. And I come down the hill, and I come down onto the flats, and we make the turn for home, and he's coming back to me, coming back to me, coming back to me, and then we cross the finish line, and he beat me by, I don't know, a couple of steps or whatever.
Oh my
You ran out
God.
of
And
ran out of runway.
I just
Yeah.
ran out of runway. That was
Yeah.
it. And the joke, of course, was if it was 2 miles, I would have gotten him. But I don't know. Who knows? And it turns out that kid was John Troutman, or would
Yeah.
become John Troutman.
Yeah.
And we finish, and we go, and little do I know, I go looking for my dad after the race, and he's over standing on the field talking to John Troutman's dad. And I'm like, okay. So, like as you said, Troutman went on to break Prefontaine's 3,000 meter record at Penn, actually, in high school, and then went on to be an Olympian. And one of the best races I've ever seen was when he at Georgetown with Mike Starr on the anchor leg ran the distance medley and set the world record in the distance medley. So he was for real. He was not to be
Yeah.
ignored. And we had a couple of run-ins over the years, but we ended up, meeting at meets in college and stuff and chit-chatting. And, friends, I don't know, friendly, definitely. And now he's coaching at NYU now.
Did he
But
come back on? Did he come back at you for your comment on the hill? Did he hear your comment on the hill?
he has a copy of the book.
Oh, okay. So you're just waiting for a call.
No, he never said anything. And it's one of those things. It's funny. You're a little kid, you say this thing, and you're like, and I was embarrassed by it for a long time
Yeah,
and
you
never
would.
told anybody. And
Yeah.
then I wrote it in the book, and I'm like, you know what? It's, I don't know if he even heard it when I said it,
Yeah.
honestly. But it's in my head. I said it really loudly,
Mhm.
to make a point, and
Yeah.
and he thumped me. It was good. It was a good race. So, but he's a super 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 nice guy and a good coach and has a tremendous history in the
Yeah.
sport himself.
I mean,
Uh,
having said that, that guy is an Olympian, and you're
mhm.
a few years earlier, so you never know how people are going to develop. But you're basically running stride for stride with people who go on to be Olympians.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me reading the book again that your colleges are sort of hampered by injuries or an injury that kind of went on and
Yeah.
developed or was undiagnosed and developed
Yep.
and probably caused you to underperform. I mean, do you think is that true?
Yeah. Well,
Do you
that's
have a sort of inkling that, oh, what if I'd had a straight run
hurt me, Alan, hurt me.
unhindered?
Yeah. No,
We're here
that's a
to ask the
big
hard questions on our podcast. Huh? Yeah.
it's really, I mean, that's a big part of why I wrote the book, honestly. It's because you're kind of working through all this personal psychology. And I had a
Yeah.
good friend of mine, my friend Jeff, read it. He was one of the guys I sent the book to before I pursued anybody else seeing
Hmm.
it. I sent it to Mark Wetmore to see. He was I was the most concerned about what he thought about it
Yeah.
because I wanted to make sure it was right. I wanted to make sure my memories were, right or at least reasonable. And his response was great. I mean, he came back with a couple of thoughts about um, specifically thoughts about Arthur Lydiard and what Lydiard might have said,
Hmm.
and sort of corrected me on a couple of things. But otherwise, he thought it was right on the mark, and it was as he remembered, and that kind of stuff, and it was great. And then, but my friend Jeff Simpson, I sent it to, and he was the other guy I was a little concerned. The only other person I was really concerned about getting something right about, and he was very complimentary. But his first when I first told him about it, his first question to me was, "Oh, you wrote a book about all our running days. Is it a is it a love letter or a cautionary tale?"
Mm.
And I said, "Well,
Nicely put.
it's a little bit of both."
Hmm.
And he said, "No, good, it should be." And I said, "Good, okay." So he read it and he liked it, and that was great. But so that was kind of working through all this, yeah, really deep disappointment from a young age.
Hmm.
It hangs around, and and you move on, and you live your life, and you have your career and all that kind of stuff. But there's always this sort of like, the what if, as you said. Um, so I had to kind of work through it, and most people seem to enjoy the story anyway. But yeah, I mean, I was 100% sure I was going to run at a certain level, and then I went to Villanova, and I developed a stress fracture in my left tarsal navicular bone, which is a little bone in the ankle. And in those days, they didn't really know how to diagnose it. So the doctors there were basically, "Oh, it's tendonitis, keep training." And so it developed into something much bigger than it probably should have been. Certainly much bigger than it would have been 10 years later with what they'd learned. So I never quite got the running career back on track. And so yeah, that was really disappointing and heartbreaking even. But and I didn't for a long time. I didn't really pay attention to the sport. I didn't follow it. I didn't, at all because it was just kind of painful. And then about the time my son started running, I started paying more attention because he heard some of the stories and he met some of the people. And when we moved out here, he met Mark for the first time, and he was kind of like intrigued uh, and interested, and because Mark's a great storyteller. So he kind of got into that, and so I started following the sport more and going back and reading about the older stuff, and I always kind of followed Mark's teams at CU, even though I wasn't really following the sport deeply. So I always kind of kept an eye on what he was doing and how his cross country teams were doing and that kind of stuff. So um, So that was it. So and now my connection, after having put the book out, all of a sudden it's like I have a whole lot more friends than I had before because everybody has some version. Uh, you
Of the
know,
story of, yeah,
I remember when I was at the Penn Relays, or I
yeah.
remember when I was at the Millrose games, or I remember hearing
That's
about
so
those
cool.
Bernards teams, or I ran against Mark Wetmore's team when I was at name a school,
Yeah, so it
Colorado
prompts
State,
everybody
or
else's stories.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so a lot of people have reached out to kind of, say thank you, or I appreciate the book, or I really enjoyed the book, or something like that. And it's been um so all those years of not paying attention, I've made up for them in the last, year or so of meeting people, and it's been interesting. It's been fun.
Wow.
So so maybe it was worth it, all that injury and pain and suffering.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. A lot of runners around our age, those who have a professional career and have a life and a family and
Mhm.
run on the side or even semi-pro or whatever they
Right.
do, they sort of have sometimes, maybe even oftentimes, a second career with running, a second
Yep.
career with running. They might have been a collegiate athlete, they might have been a high school athlete and runner,
Right.
and then sometime in the middle they dropped it because life happens fast, and then you're in your 20s, early 30s, and you come back to it, or you come into athletics and running from a different sport.
Right.
And it seems like in your story, you also had a moment where you took a break and you came back to running, and now you see
Mhm.
it differently, and you wrote a book about it.
Mhm.
With when it comes to as you said, the love letter to running.
Right.
How do you see the sport of running, whether it's cross country, track and field, road running? How do you see it differently from when you were in it the first stage of your life, where you were in that first
Oh
love affair
boy.
with it? How does it differ,
That's
and how's it the same?
that's a really good question. Well, when I was very young, when I first you're a young kid, and you all your friends are into sports of some kind or another, and they're like, "Oh, come on out, we'll play football. Come on out, we'll play baseball or basketball. Go play a pickup basketball game or whatever." And you try everything, and some kids find their sports. I'm thinking of one kid in particular I grew up with who seemed to be good at everything.
There's always
It was
one of those in every
baseball,
school.
Darn them.
anything with a
Curse
ball,
them.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything with a ball, he was great at. And then we used to joke later on, it's like, oh, those are ball sports. We don't play those. But we always had a football around, or a frisbee or something. And so I tried everything growing up, and it was good fortune for me that we had the recreation department run for fun program, because it introduced me uh in a physical way to the sport that I would come to really love. My dad was a hurdler in high school, and a pretty good one in those days. And so I knew, he had a little frame with a handful of his medals up in a corner somewhere collecting dust. And I always asked what they were. And my mom was like, "Oh, those are your dad's track medals." And my dad never really talked about it. Later, he did a little bit. But so I vaguely knew what track was, and when we drive through town, the road was sort of above the high school track, and I'd look down and see the concentric circles around the corners of the track, and say, "Wow, what is that? I want to know what that is." And when I got old enough to do the Run for Fun program, it was like, "Yeah, I want to get out here and see what all this is all about." Um, so everything was learning something and getting to know somebody, and all through high school, even you're meeting people, like, again, being part of something bigger than yourself. You're meeting people you didn't know about before, or only heard about, and then you get to connect it to a real person. And then after years later, after injury, you kind of give it away, and try to forget about it because it's kind of painful. To come back to it is an odd feeling. It's sort of cheering on Mark's college teams from a distance was always there. But then it was when my son started paying attention to it, the joy started to creep back in. And I always had sort of a vague idea of maybe going to run, a couple of road races here or there, and um, but it was, seeing my son get into it and then realizing that, and you follow the pros, right? You follow the world records, you follow the,
Yeah.
and then they develop super shoes, and you're following the people who get tapped for doping and all the negative stuff. But then you go and watch a high school meet or a junior high school meet,
Oh, yeah.
and they're just having fun.
Oh, yeah.
They just love that their spikes are yellow, you know, and that they can catch a baton before
Yeah.
it hits the ground, or
You
something
don't
like
find them
that.
as neurotic about paces and
I,
about
No, it's
effort. They're
just
just,
I guess you see examples from the outside of what you remember feeling on the inside when you were there the first time.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good description of it. I think it's you see just the joy of sports that you play sports, right? You don't work at sports, you play
Hmm.
sports.
yeah,
And who plays more than anybody are the kids. So they're supposed to be fun, even at the highest level, there's supposed to be an element of fun.
yeah,
And so when you can see that and connect to that, I think that's what got me paying attention to it again, is that there's really sort of a joy to this whole thing. And of course over the years, the technical aspect of it is sports medicine got better. Programs started paying attention to individuals more than just check marks on a list. Because when I was there, you just ran everybody into the ground, and whoever was healthy on race day ran. And that's less of a thing today than it was. I mean, it still exists here and there, but it's less of a thing because they realize that there's value to, even having, a red shirt injured kid
Hmm.
cheering everybody on and carrying stuff and whatever. So it's yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is. And to see my son and his friends participating and racing each other and talking trash and all that stuff, it brings a lot of that back, the bus rides and the because we traveled a fair amount for a little public school. We traveled a fair amount. We don't travel like Niwot travels. They go out to Arizona a couple times a year and
Whoa,
stuff like that. But we'd get on a bus and go to a meet in Virginia, or we'd go to a lot of meets in New York City and stuff like that. And so we spent a lot of time on road trips together. And you kind of forget, if you're not doing it, you kind of forget that that's
yeah,
part of it.
yeah,
And so there's a whole sort of tribe-like feeling
Yeah.
to being around all these other kids, and that's and you lose that over time. And you see the pro groups, and there's a handful of them. It's not like, a busload.
yeah. Well said. Thank you for
Yeah, I
that.
mean, doing the full day bus drive, all in this together, bonding on the bus,
Mm-hmm.
forms the tribe, but it actually also probably works against the sport a little bit in that increasingly parents can't afford for their kids to be doing that. You've
That's
got
that's no
another kid
joke.
who needs to go to something else in the afternoon, and then that becomes a balancing act, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it always is. I'm fortunate. The double edge, right? We have Aiden as our only son, as our only child. And so we can spend a little more time and money and energy and getting to these things because it's only one. And again, it's a different time too. In those days, the bus rides we lived in New Jersey, and if we went to Van Cortlandt Park, it was maybe an hour and 15 minutes on a bus or a minibus. Um, if the few distance, and we we'd do anything to try and defray the cost of these trips. So we'd do bake sales, and we sold for the Junior Olympics. I remember selling like ballpoint pens door to door, crazy like small town stuff, and that helped us get to these events, and that was great. But you're right, because not everybody can go, and not everybody can afford to go, and you do what you can to create the opportunities where you can. But I see even here the club aspect of it. There's dues for the club. There's travel. Aiden just went to they had camp. They had summer camp, about 4 days up at about 8,500 feet, uh, which costs, a fee to get everybody up there and all that. And they had a ball. They had a great time, and we're fortunate that we're able to do that. But that's always been a thing, you try and make it equitable as best you can. But when there's cost involved, it's got to come from somewhere. So, maybe that's a thing. Maybe there's a way, maybe there's a group to go start solving those problems. I don't know.
Oh, well, one of the things we say is, to runners is, if you're a runner out there and you're wondering where your next step is, are you in a
Mm,
club? Because you need
mm,
to find your tribe. If you find your tribe,
Yeah.
you'll find all
Yeah.
sorts of little add-ons, things that you didn't know about,
absolutely. I couldn't recommend
things
that
that you
more.
thought you were on your own, but actually everybody suffers from this anxiety, races, or whatever. Um,
Yeah, that's a real thing. And runners, I always used to say runners are a little bit odd to begin with. There's sort of an institutionalized insanity that goes along with being an endurance athlete.
Yeah.
And when
yeah,
you find groups of us
type
together,
two
you
fun.
realize, oh, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If I am insane, I'm insane with a group of people. Excellent.
Much more accepted now.
Yeah.
It's true.
Just switching the gears up a little bit. One of the things both Cheyenne and I noticed is that you proceed quite a lot of the chapters of your books with quotes, and I twigged quite early on that all your quotes were from songs, or nearly all of your quotes were from songs. Um, we've probably come from a similar era because a lot of the songs, I think, I recognized some of the lyrics.
Very
Um,
good. I'm glad.
are you a music fan?
I am a music
What,
fan.
so did you
We
just naturally inspire yourself with lyrics, or
well,
did you look through
this
your old
you
collection
you've
for
tapped into
inspiration?
something here,
Okay.
because there again, the long bus rides require a musical accompaniment. So in our day, it was eventually it was like a Walkman, but early on it was a boombox. So everybody had to listen to whatever you were playing.
Yeah.
And so there were two things, because there are some quotes are literary and some quotes are music. And the
Okay.
music quotes mostly come from my sort of mid to late 80s era. And it's because that's what we were playing on the bus. And I tried to
Okay.
think of some song that somehow fit into the story in some way.
Hmm.
So we had, and I still I still listen to a lot of this stuff, and I try and introduce Aiden to
Yeah.
some of my musical taste. He's become a bit of a Rush fan lately for some reason, and I
That's
find that
because of
very,
Annika Niles, probably
yeah, I find it
bringing
really
it back
interesting.
to the youth of today.
Yeah, I mean, I loved him when I was a kid, but
Yeah.
it's fun to see him get into that. But anyway, we had like the Police, the Clash, a lot of that stuff was big. And that's what all the schools were playing on the way to cross country meets, and in our day, they didn't need. Now all these teams get off and they set up tents, and they have their sort of home base with a tent
Hmm.
and all that. We didn't have any of that. To see somebody with a tent was like, oh my God, they have a tent. I didn't know that was a thing. And
They must
we
be
had a
rich.
tree. We had a tree that we'd find, and that was like our
Yeah.
place to hang. And so you'd walk from the bus to the tree with the music playing, and that was it was like entering the arena as a boxer or something. And so a lot of Clash, a lot of Police, a lot of all
Yeah,
kinds of stuff.
mostly when you put the name of the band or the group underneath the lyrics, I was able to go, oh yeah, that's X song.
Oh,
That's
that's who that is. Yeah.
yeah,
And that was,
I could recognize the song.
but it was linked. I mean, absolutely linked to the team and their musical taste. So almost everything in there was a favorite of mine at one point or another. But it was certainly a favorite of somebody on the team. And then there were other, like the girls liked one type of music and the guys liked a different kind of music.
Mhm.
So there was that. But the literary quotes were, so Mark Wetmore was an English teacher and a big reader and remains a big reader, as do all of us. And a big part of his coaching, teaching, mentoring of us was talking about books and things and stories and literature and all that. So my way of sort of getting into that tone was to pick out, you know, quotes from books and authors and songs and poems. And I remember like there's one in there. It's a quote from Ozymandias.
Osmandias. Yeah,
Ozymandias, the Percy Shelley poem.
yeah.
And I remember we had a whole day where he quoted that to us as we were stretching and getting ready for a run, and then started telling the whole story of, who was this ancient Egyptian visage lying in the sand. And I was probably 13 when I heard that, and I still remember that story today. So and he would quote, Crime and Punishment. He would quote, um, the electric Kool-Aid acid test, Tom Wolfe, and all kinds of stuff. So it was just part of, everything was learning something,
Woven in.
and encouraging us to be good students in addition to being good athletes was a massive part of what we were doing. Um, so, all that music, all that, and again, we had a small school that had, at least in my class, sort of an inordinate number of rather talented folks. So, we had the great running team, yes, but we had a pretty good soccer team. We had a really good batch of musicians. Um, one of whom I'm still friends with today, who played on he lives in Nashville, and he played with with Steve Martin and
Okay.
Allison Brown on this new banjo album. He did all the vocal arrangements for the Brian Setzer Orchestra Christmas album and stuff like that. It's like so we had a lot of people who had a lot of interests beyond just, the John Hughes version of high school.
Mhm.
And so, I consider myself very lucky to have been around a lot of these people and a lot of these teachers and a lot of these mentors. And so the quotes were a way of trying to kind of capture that feeling that was just around the training
Hmm.
ground all the time. We weren't, yeah, I could have quoted you every mile world record from Paavo Nurmi to Sebastian Coe, but that's not what we were talking about every
Josh
day.
Kerr.
That was extraordinary. That was fun to watch, I'll tell you.
That was. Shout out to Josh Kerr on breaking a 27-year-old record.
Oh, once again,
So,
he does that and he gets like, little mention in the news.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
I don't understand that.
He's
I
just
really
walked
don't.
on, he's just walked on the moon basically,
Yeah.
um, from our perspective. But
Yeah, we
yeah.
forget the number of times we've seen runners try to break that record, and
Yeah.
when they finally do it, and he talked about it for months and months. I think someone deserves more recognition.
In front of 60,000 screaming
Yeah,
fans, no less. That
at
was
home, no
extraordinary.
less too.
Yeah, that was great. That was
That's
so much fun.
And when it comes to coaching specifically, I mean, you mentioned Mark
Yep.
Wetmore, and his ability to capture the whole humane aspect. You're a
Right.
student, you're a runner, you're a knowledge, you have a thirst for knowledge at a young age.
Mhm.
And one thing he would do as a coach, you're quoted in an article at some point saying that he would like set goals. He would, not tell you what some of those goals are, but you were always chasing something, whether it was
Yep.
unique or something keeping you in the sport. And I feel like you did that justice by not only writing a book about your story and how it overlaps with the story of a young Mark Wetmore, but you also
Right.
put in a a spattering of incredibly interesting workouts. You just put it in there, and it relates to the story, and you quote it, and we just as a person overall, I love
Yeah.
seeing it, seeing how it relates to the story. As a coach, I love seeing it because it just gets my gears turning. What I wanted to know about those specific workouts is you have great stories about it. One of them is the idea of the Master Blaster.
Mm.
Maybe we could start with that. What is that workout? Why is it called the Master Blaster? And overall, if you want to tell us what those workouts meant to you and why you put them in.
Right. Well, Mark comes from the Arthur Lydiard School of Training,
Yeah.
which depend in my experience is one thing. A lot of people would probably describe it in different ways, but it's basically a periodization, I guess. So you have like a section of the year where you're doing a lot of sort of base distance training, not particularly fast, but steady. And then there's a time where you're approaching the racing season and you start to do strength work. So you're doing a lot of hill running and stuff like that. And then you come closer to the racing season and you start doing real speed work, what we call specificity work specific to your event. And one of the things, and I got a copy early on of Running the Lydiard Way, which I probably have around here too at some point. Um, oh no, it's in my son's room. That's right. He's reading it.
Shout out
Again.
Aiden. Good job, man.
Yeah.
Again? Did you
Again.
say
Yeah.
again?
Again. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
He flips through it a lot and looks for things.
Well done,
So
Aiden.
it's so sort of the unheard, unseen character in this whole story is Arthur Lydiard. I never met the man, but Mark met him in kind of the mid to late 70s. He was on one of his speaking tours, and a friend of our program, a guy named Larry Sullivan, somehow knew him or got to know him and invited him to Bernardsville. And so he came to Bernardsville and met Mark, and they went out on a 30-mile run in the Somerset Hills and talked about what's the Lydiard method. And he really started asking him because Mark was working with sort of age group kids at that time. What, you don't really talk about age group kids or young kids or growing kids in your books. What about that? That's who I'm working with. What do you think? And they talked it all through. And so Mark sort of developed a modified Lydiard system for young kids like me at that time, or I would come a little bit later. And so everything kind of came from the Lydiard perspective. And so in those before Lydiard, there's a long way of saying before Lydiard, a standard workout was go do 8 times 400 in race pace, or 12 times 400 in race pace, or a million times 400 in race pace. And that was your workout. And people were still doing, when I went to Villanova, they were still doing that on some days. And so the Lydiard method was more thoughtful, more scientific, more planned out over the course of a longer time. Um, so instead of doing a lot of like repeat quarters work, which we did from time to time, Mark would throw in things that um, were a little bit different with a little bit different specific things for your body to learn doing, and also to be a little more fun because going out and just crushing a bunch of 400s with your team, it's not particularly fun. And so he came up with this idea for a thing called a Master Blaster. And the first time we did it was a cross country version, but we did it on the track as well. But the cross country one, it was I think it was probably about 500 meters of the first loop of our cross country course. So it was a little bit of a hill and a little bit of a downhill and all grass. And so you're running an uneven turf. And the idea was we had maybe 12 or 14 guys on the guys team. The girls did the same workout, but with their group. And so they called it a master blaster, meaning that each guy would get a chance to lead one interval, one fast part. And then that same guy would lead the recovery, which would be another 200 meters or 300 meters or what it was to come back around to the starting line. And, we had kind of a specific time in mind, but the rule was whoever was leading could do it whatever pace he wanted, whatever speed he wanted. And the recovery could be whatever speed he wanted as well. So if he wanted the recovery to be really fast, he could do it. If he wanted to be really
Oh
slow, he
my
could do that.
God.
And so that was the only rule. And then the next guy would take over the next one. The only rule was if you were off the back by the time the group got to the starting line again, you were out. And nobody wanted to be out.
Okay. Yeah.
Nobody who was serious wanted to be out anyway. And so you'd go, and we went, and by the time we got to the 11th, 12th, 13th repeat, it was our top guys were the ones who were leading the last few, and most of the guys had dropped out by that time. So, pretty much everybody did like 8, and then different bits of the group did a bit more. And whoever, if there was only one guy left to do the last one, that was the master blaster. And so you'd win some kind of a prize or something that was, sitting in somebody's car. I don't know, but that was the master blaster workout. So the idea was a little bit, not just repeating pace and repeating, it was competitive, and it was like, so maybe the third guy could hang on a little bit longer and beat the first guy in this particular workout.
So you're getting a hell of a workout with a little bit of racecraft kind of
Yeah.
thrown in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Surprised it's not a race of some sort yet. I mean, we got the backyard ultra. We can have one of these up set up once a
I think
year.
that's-
It's not a bad idea.
I think
really.
cycling have something like that. Is it called the Omnium or something where you
Oh yeah,
Oh, they
spend
do.
sometimes
They do.
sprinting and sometimes
Yeah.
coasting and
They got
You know,
points
it's
set
funny.
up with that.
I bet you that's where it came from too. It's really funny.
I don't know.
If
It's
you- if
quite
you-
it's quite a
yeah.
modern
Yeah.
event, I think so.
We need that for running.
Yeah.
Something else that might have come from Arthur Lydiard or just Mark is the idea that a lot of your workouts, if not most of them, you evaluated them by I want to
Time.
get this right. Elapsed time. So totally
Yeah.
what time did we start with? What time did we end? Doesn't matter. Without 2026, we can't just start our watch and stop it whenever the time is up. And if you go on Strava or Garmin today, there is an elapsed time metric, but
Yeah.
that's not the metric telling you your average pace. It's how much time you run. But
Yeah.
there was the idea on your team where we evaluated total time elapsed, and that was a better indicator of our workout. Why was that?
Right. It was that's a good question. A lot of our workouts were like that. If we were doing like in the summer, towards the end of the summer, we started introducing a little race pace stuff, doing 1,000-meter repeats or 600-meter repeats. We would time. You'd basically have 2 watches going. You'd look at what time of day it was and make a note of that when you start, and then you'd use the stopwatch for the individual repeats. Yeah. And so you'd make a note, okay, we're starting at 5:48, go. And we'd start, and then we'd run our 1,000-meter repeats at whatever pace those were supposed to be. And then we'd run the interval in between, the rest, as based on feeling. A lot of our workouts were based on feeling too, and less on pace, which is another thing too, because the idea was if you're out there racing without a watch, you should know by feel how fast you're going. And that's a hard thing to do. It drives me crazy when I see all the kids doing their Garmin watches in their races, and I'm like, "What are you doing?"
Nobody can do it anymore because they've got a device to tell them. So nobody's got a feel for it anymore.
Yeah, and the feel was part of it, and it's like anyway. So
part of the love of it too, like feeling the paces feels.
Right, exactly right. So the idea was that we had 6,000-meter repeats at race pace, whatever that was, or near race pace, or whatever tempo it was. But it was the 6,000 meters plus the intervals, and then plus whatever else on either end to make it an even number of Ks.
Yeah.
So you ran X number per K or X number per mile. So the thing that really mattered was your pace per mile for the workout rather than the individual bits.
I see.
Because you know what those are, you know how fast they are. That's great. But the idea was that over time, if you do that workout multiple weeks in a row or multiple months in a row, you can go back and see, okay, my elapsed time for the whole thing, I started really turning down
Okay.
the rest in between got
Yeah.
shorter and shorter. So that to translate that into a race mentality, um, because you don't get a break in your race, you're turning down the screws and you know what you can do over that distance.
Mhm.
So it's a feeling thing. It was really and it was really funny because I remember I had a friend who he used to joke about how right on the mark I'd be when we were doing repeat quarters on the track. And he was like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I just learned. I got used to the feel. I knew what 70 seconds felt like, and that's what we
Wow.
did. And we'd hit 70, 70, 70, 70.
Because you did loads and loads of
That's
them without
impressive.
reference to a watch,
We did a
really.
lot of
Yeah.
them, and it
Yeah.
was not always quarters. It might be 35s. It might be, whatever 600 meters is at 70-second pace. My
Mhm.
math is not as strong as it used to be, and you just get used to it. And so what,
Yeah. Yeah.
later in my career, you know what 60 seconds is for a quarter.
Hmm.
And it wasn't even so much what 60 was compared to 61 or 59. It was like, I know what 60 is, I know what faster than 60 is, and I know what slower
Yeah.
than 60 is.
Mhm.
And you hit
Yeah.
it right in the middle. So it's a thing, and it was a lot of those workouts were just learning that stuff. And people are gonna think we were cavemen with this story, but we had hill workouts we did where we would literally pick up stones at the bottom of the hill and run the hill and drop the stones at the top of the hill and go back down and get another couple of stones. So the
What?
idea was
Sisyphus in action.
instead of running with little barbells, this trail happened to have a bunch of stones at the bottom of it. So it's like, okay, grab two, do them 8 times.
Weighted vests before weighted vests.
No, yeah, we didn't. No, who needs the vest?
Wow.
Just grab a couple of rocks.
I have so many ideas. So many ideas for fall. I can't wait. I
And
have to
they're
check it out.
f-
You just
and
triggered
they're
a
fun.
Yeah.
The
yeah.
fun part. This
You
is
just
part of
triggered
the
you,
fun part
you just
too.
triggered a memory. We used to do soccer training when I was at college. What you do is you
Mhm.
do it in pairs, and you put one guy on your back, and then you
Oh
run up the
Oh
hill.
God.
And then
Yeah,
you drop him
yeah,
off. You both run down, and then you get on his back, and he carry you up the hill.
he said
right,
And
Rog,
right.
Alan,
and
not
and
human
because
being.
and because because I was a little guy, they always used to think it was really fun because I was this little skinny ultra runner sort of guy.
Yeah,
They used to think it was really fun. They'd always pair me up with the biggest guy in the team,
they gave you the
like
big guy.
6'5", and I would just do the training thing. I would just go, okay,
Oh, for a
just try
cell
to
phone
do
with a
it,
camera in it.
and just try to do it. But I mean, my legs would be buckling, and everybody would be giggling. But I get training out of it.
Oh,
Yes.
but that's it. So we did a lot of things that
And a laugh.
they were fun, they were challenging, they were unusual. So like if you tried to explain that to somebody
Mm.
like today, somebody yeah, I would tell somebody a hill workout. We did this hill workout, we picked up rocks, we did blah blah blah. They'd be like, "Well, how long was the hill?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It was steep and
Yeah.
short, or
It's
it
a
Yeah.
was
hill.
it was not quite as steep and 600-ish.
Uh,
I don't know what the real distance was. Well, what time did you run the hills in? And I'm like, I don't know.
yeah. To the top.
And they're like, but how do you know, how do you measure that? And I'm
Yeah.
like, we didn't. We ran hard. That's all we knew. And so and there were, Mark had a better idea of how far these things were than we did. So he kind of knew what we were doing. But the big thing was to get the effort in, and to get a feel for the speed and a feel for the pace and all that. And looking back on it, maybe it is a little, maybe it does seem a little strange compared to what they do today. But I don't know. It was effective for us.
I think the thing is today you've got the tools and the measurement and the data available. so that you can analyze it to the absolute nth degree.
Yeah,
But one of the things you got to remember is that there's the fun aspect, there's the giggle factor to it.
absolutely.
And if you're doing the running, you're having a chat with a friend, um, you can do your run and you don't feel it.
Yeah.
You can do the same run at the same speed on your own with a watch, and you got to look at your watch every 10 minutes, and it feels like it's taking forever and it's
And it's a
excruciating.
bear. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think we forget that
absolutely.
sometimes. But maybe
Well, and
that's
there's
just my old-fashionedness showing through.
see, I think I think old fashioned needs to be, or old school needs to be less of a criticism than it is
Mm,
sometimes is.
mm,
And the other thing is, and this is something we were talking about Josh Kerr and the world record and all that. And it's funny, before he made that, I went back and was kind of digging down through YouTube, looking at some of the older world record attempts. So the Cohen Ovett back and forth in 81, and
mhm.
this Steve Cram in 85, and Coe by himself in 79, and all this stuff. And I'm watching it and I'm like, they're, yeah, they had some pace setters, not the same way. They don't have pace lights at
No.
all. And I'm like, I always get kind of bothered by the pace lights, honestly. I think it's nice for the crowd, but I don't know. It all kind of seems a little, you know, I don't want to say it seems like cheating, but it kind of seems like cheating. Like, you got to know what the pace is.
Yeah.
And so when you take it at 600 meters with the rest of the way to go, you got to do it on your own, and you just take it on
Hmm.
your back
Yeah.
and carry
Yeah.
it. And so that's nothing against Josh Carr, because it was really an impressive run. But so those things. So there's a time in my thinking anyway, and maybe the science will not bear this out, but um, that time, yeah, you can have the data, you can have the measurements, you can have uh, cataloging all of that in your Strava, and this is old-fashioned Strava. I'm
Yes, I
For
see
those who
it.
don't see it, I'm using a pencil on my hand, and you can have all of that stuff, all those numbers, but there's a point where you're in the race and it comes time to go, and you have to just know that you can go no matter what the time is. Like, you're not paying it. Like, there's that, you can't worry about, oh, I'm faster than the pace I wanted to be. You just go, and and maybe that's an old school way of thinking, but I think it makes it exciting too. So I don't know.
We should be trying to wrap up, just wind up. So I'll
Okay.
give you, if you've got any last questions, Cheyenne, I don't know. One of the things I'll just sort of close with is I rather enjoyed the end of your book with respect to, correct me if I get the rereading of it wrong,
Right.
but you actually gave one of your Villanova watches to Mark,
Penn
Wetmore.
relays watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Hmm.
I think he said that he'd thrown away all of his old trophies or something. They were just collecting dust, so he got rid of everything. But he said, "But I still have your watch, Lyle."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your response to that was, "No, that's your watch, Mark," which I think
Yeah.
was a very cool exit, and a
Well, I
testament
meant,
to what you thought the guy had delivered to you in your running career.
yeah, I meant it, and I mean it now, and yeah, because he said he's not one for, I'm trying to quote it, nostalgia,
Yeah,
or keepsakes and
yeah,
things like that, because
yeah.
like, even with his college team, even with his CU teams, they'd win the national championship and they'd go up to get their trophy, and he would not go with them. That's them. They earn that. They get the
Hmm.
picture. They get the celebration. He'd be standing off on a hill, probably thinking about what
The
needed to
next
happen
training.
next
Yeah.
summer. Yeah. And so he was never one for any of that sort of thing. And the story with the second watch was funny, because when we won, when I was a senior in high school, that's 12th grade, for the Canadians out there. I don't know if you used to call it senior year or not.
Yeah.
Um,
Well said.
we won, but the NCAA, in its infinite wisdom, in that year, decided that the watches
Oh no.
uh, constituted like a merchandise award.
A monetary
So
prize.
the high schoolers were not allowed to get them. And then over the next winter, they had changed their mind and changed the rule. And so the next year, the high schoolers were going to get watches again. So ours was the only year that high schoolers were
Oh,
not getting
wow.
watches. But the University of Pennsylvania and the Penn Relays organization, rightfully so, I think, and uh, gratefully so for me, they gave all of those kids from the year before who won the national titles, they gave them the watches
Ah,
again from the
so
year
they got
before.
retrospectively awarded.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. And so I went back and I managed to get it engraved just before the meet. And I made a point of going over to see Mark at the meet and I gave him the watch there. And
Wow.
he might tell you a different story than this, but my perception of it was he didn't quite know what to say. Because I don't know, this is not to, toot my horn at all, but it's like I don't know how many people give away their Penn Relays watches, but he seemed kind of moved by it, and so I was grateful, and so he said, I'm not one for keepsakes and memory, mementos and that sort of thing. And I basically don't have any trophies or any of those things, but I have your watch. And that was what you said. And I said, no, that's your watch. It's not mine. Because, they didn't give coaches watches. They didn't give coaches awards. And he did as much for me as any other human on earth. So why not? I mean, it wasn't all, I still have the first watch.
Yeah. I'm not going to ask you if you only had one watch, would you still have done it? I'm not even going to ask you. It would spoil the ending to the book.
It's akin to an Olympic athlete giving their Olympic coach a medal because Olympic coaches don't get medals, and how
Yeah,
hard you
it's
work
right.
for
And
that one Olympic medal.
I would not have been able to do in the sport what I have done without him. And honestly, I don't think I would be the person I am without his influence over that time in my life. So yeah, why not? It's a watch. Here you go. I appreciate. I want to somehow show you that I value what you've done for me, and I think that I don't even know what to say about it, honestly. Um, I
I
am
think
surprised, however, that neither one of you has asked about the 20-mile run.
I had actually noted it down, and there was just so much to ask that I actually skipped that question in our notes. But please tell
Yeah.
us.
Oh, well, no, it was just the thing. It's part of the Lydiard
Yeah, yeah,
part is
yeah,
the long run,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And Lydiard always talked about it in terms of minutes,
yeah.
so he
Yes.
was always like 90 minutes or more,
Uh-huh.
and that kind of stuff. And so, we had a 20-mile course in Bernardsville that we all ran. I was probably 13 when I ran my first one.
Hmm.
And
And you had some sort of religious aura around
Church of
this
the
run as
Sunday.
well, didn't you?
yeah, we used to call
Church
it,
of the Sunday
we
20
jokingly
milers.
called it, yeah, the
Yeah.
Church of the Sunday 20-miler.
And it's a term that is still used everywhere. Like it's widespread across. It transcends running and mentalities per se, but it's broken down into ideas of you have to run 2 hour long run at the very least if
Oh
you're
yeah,
training for a long distance running, half marathon, marathons.
absolutely.
It's something that I could track back to Lydiard because we have the first time I came in contact with Mark Wetmore as a name as a household name was through a YouTuber, Seth James
Yeah.
Demore, who former Buffaloes
Oh, I
runner.
know Seth. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know him personally?
I met him at a CU at the event, the retirement event.
Oh
He
wow.
was there, so I met him there. I reached out to him one time because I found him somewhere.
Yeah.
He did a video about Mark and
Right.
running with the Buffaloes and all that.
Yeah.
And so I saw he had, I don't know, 75,000 followers
He
or
was a big
subscribers
shoe
or something.
tuber for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I reached out to him thinking, hey, mention the book. Let me sell some books. And he very graciously did. I sent
That's
him a
amazing.
book and he seemed
That's
to
cool.
like it. And he's a very nice guy, very nice fellow.
Yeah, you can really see all these branches fall away from the one tree, and the tree goes past Wetmore. We're talking bigger, not bigger, so
Oh
early
yeah,
Ames,
yeah,
later
yeah.
then, and we can really see that some of these things people will always talk about a 20-mile long run.
Yep,
They'll talk about a 2-hour long run. They'll talk
yep,
about a elapsed time and going by
yep.
feel. And these are all separate things. If you're new into running, you think of these as separate things, but
Right,
and the person will not necessarily credit where it got through because they heard it from someone.
right,
That person heard from
right.
someone, and the other person heard from someone. But let's track back all those someones, and it comes right back to the people you talk
Back
about
to
in your
Lydiard,
book.
and
Yeah,
it's the good ideas survive, right?
yeah.
So
So it's not
yeah,
old school, right? It's it's
yeah,
it's school. We're
it
we're at the
is.
we're at the school of running.
That's it, man.
That's amazing. Thank you. That was a great way
So
to.
if people want to check for themselves, get the more literary version of the stories and fill in all the details, and are intrigued by our discussions, where would you like to direct them to get a copy of the book?
Well, I mean, you can get it at any of your favorite digital book marketplaces, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, probably the biggest of the bunch, bookshop.org. It is also, if you would like a signed copy, you can order it directly from my website, which is lylesmith.net. lylesmith.net. And your local bookstore, if they don't have it, and they might not, they can certainly order it and get it through their normal bookshop channels. There's also an audiobook version of it available on Audible. Um, and
Is it your
I hope.
velvety voice?
Say again?
Is
It's
it
in
your
my, but yes,
velvet?
I narrated it
Yes,
myself.
yes. Which is hard to do, from what I hear.
It's not
Extremely
easy.
hard.
Yeah, it's not easy. It took a little getting used to, but and
Wow.
it's easier when it's your own stuff. But
Was it
it's
emotional for you actually talking the book through?
in a couple of places,
Yeah,
some of the injury parts
yeah,
were a little tough, and some of the giving the watch away at the end in the epilogue is
yeah.
that's a little close to the heart, but it was fun because I'm remembering some of these things
Sure.
and a lot of these people and these places, and
It's a lot of what
that
you
were
do it
so,
for.
yeah, it's so foundational, so it was I did have a good time doing it once I kind of figured out all the microphone and the technology part of it. But it was good, and it's so yeah, it's out there pretty much wherever you buy books. Just ask
Okay,
for
cool.
it. And if you want a signed copy, I'm happy to send one.
Excellent. I already have one. Thank you. Um, and thanks for signing it.
Yeah.
And
My
if people want
pleasure.
to follow you, are you on social media or do you have a website?
Yeah, I'm at Nimblegram, NYM. So Nim like synonym,
Yeah.
antonym, homonym. Nimblegram on Instagram. Um, Lylesmith.net is the website. All the links to the socials are at the bottom of that page. So I'm on Facebook, I'm on, threads and all
Okay.
that kind of stuff. But reach out through the website if you have a need or an interest, and you can find me.
Summary thoughts on Blood, Sweat, and Spikes, the Running the Wetmore Way by Lyle Smith. First of all, probably one thing that Cheyenne and I both worked out fairly early on, the book's not really very chronological. It jumps around a bit, so you need to be ready for that. I think fundamentally it's designed like that. It's more concerned with themes, following a line of thought or a sentiment or a spirit, and embodying that in the dialogue rather than following the timeline. So just be aware when you get into the book, it's going to not jump around on you, but it's going to it's going to sample from different places in the historical line. It's a good effect, I think. We haven't talked about it, but there are a bunch of grainy black and white photographs from the 80s, which give a good flavor of life before GPS watches, Strava, and super shoes. I guess I loved them because they reminded me a lot of my running. I was slightly older, probably, but I was doing the same thing in the 80s, but slower, and I was a little older. Of course, what the grainy photographs do show, if they're not showing GPS watches, Strava, and super shoes, they are showing effort and camaraderie. And these are sentiments that come throughout the book and are repeated in all the stories that we see in here. Scattered through the book are descriptions of actual training sessions. We touched on those. Cheyenne got very excited when he saw those. What I would say is the training sessions look extremely tough. The times described in them are phenomenal, and they're often done in groups designed to get more out of the training via a sort of fun, competitive spirit amongst the team, which is kind of an interesting sort of thing to see. The book's essential reading for anyone interested in history, I would say particularly of collegiate and junior running in the USA. I know, having read the Villanova track story, it's sort of had some little overlaps and junctures with that. I noticed that Lyle, for example, was talking about one of his heroes, Marty Liquori, and I thought, oh, I remember that. And I looked it up. Sure enough, he was in one of the Villanova record-breaking track teams. So there was good links there. So if you're into that sort of stuff, nostalgia, stories of camaraderie, collegiate running, it's probably a book you should look into.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump right on that same idea. There are a lot of who's who of the running world, especially if you're into collegiate American lore running, high school running. The main running characters that you think of, if they trace back to someone, you might find them in this book, and it's really cool to see that as we talk about sliding door moments, that Lyle Smith was in so many of those sliding door moments and has a connection to each of these characters, and it's really cool to see. And the book also requires you to indulge in the spirit of running, into team running, teamsmanship, outside the box coaching, the camaraderie, as Alan points to it. If you can relate to at least one of those things in running, not just solitude running every morning, but you're part of a club, or you're part of a long run, or you do a nice little jog at a run club somewhere, you feel like this book is speaking to you in some way. And as we say, it doesn't go chronologically because it taps into different emotions, and there's always an emotion that you'll feel with the book that you can relate to in your own story, no matter when it would happen. The time is just an endless circle, and it comes back again. So it was really fun to see that, although some of the names I recognize, but a lot of them happened at a time that was before mine. I felt the book more than I saw the book. And I really, really enjoyed, as Alan will joke, the wide range of workouts. As a coach, I found that it was nothing wild and eye-popping, but it was just one of those like, I never thought of that. Oh, that's such an ingenious way to try gamifying a workout. And you see some of the main types of runs that we talk about: the 20-mile long run, the 2-hour long run, the mid-distance long run. You see the genesis of these runs fall back, of the runs we have today, fall back in this book. You'll talk about perceived exertion, making recovery portions count, things like running workouts together, especially if you're in cross country or track and field. And those are the kind of things that I try to instill as a coach. And seeing that somewhere makes me realize that, well, if I learned it from someone and that person learned from someone else, you track back all that, it probably came from somewhere that Lyle is directing us to in this book. Honestly, this is one of the realizations I had as I was wrapping up the reading in the last few chapters. The best way I could put this book, and I can't shake this out of my head, nor do I want to, but it's gonna sound big. So please indulge me here. This book, as we mentioned, is a love letter to the sport of running, specifically high school collegiate ranks. It talks to the why of a junior runner and the trials they face as they begin a sport that's not a ball sport. And honestly, no hyperbole, it reads to me like reading the running version of Kobe Bryant's Dear Basketball. it reads to me like, and it's an Oscar-winning 4-minute short video that I've watched dozens of times, and it reads to me like someone wrote Dear Basketball for runners, for my sport. And it really felt like someone really spoke to me that way. So it really felt connected that way. And I think Lyle just does a great job of taking his vast experiences, his incredible accomplishments, by the way, running toe to toe with an Olympic athlete, and then making them relatable. It's not about the accomplishment. It's not about what he did. It's about the emotions he sensed, where he got to, how he got there. And you just feel like, oh, well, I could do that. I could feel the same thing doing my own paces. So it was really, really cool to see. And it's one of those books that I immediately bought for my classroom, so my kids can read it too, and I could use those workouts on in the fall. Can't wait.
Yeah, as long as you don't try and get me to do any of those.
You know what? We're going to do the Master Blaster one day. We are going to do it.
So thanks for your book, Lyle, and thanks for
Thank
your
you.
time today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I will say it was not intended to be a training guide,
Yeah.
Good.
but if you can put the workouts to use, they have value. I'll tell you, the Master Blaster is a lot of fun when you have a big, not a big group, but a good group. And the 20 times 100 was my favorite of all
Forgot to
time.
ask about that.
But that is you can ask anytime. It's a that was a lot of fun. That was one that I was so unique. I don't think I've never read anything like that anywhere else. So I don't know. I'm sure there's something somewhere, but it was a very unique workout.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. Thank you to Lyle Smith for spending time with us today. And thank you to Lyle and Zolli House Press for providing copies of the book for review. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve the podcast, or you'd like to suggest a book for further review in a future episode, please leave us a comment on social media. We are Running Book Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, or you can just subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. You may have noticed I dropped X out because I'm not doing any more stuff on X. If you've been listening to us for a while and are wondering how you can help us out, there are a few ways. If you're enjoying the podcast, spread the word. Tell your friends about us, share a link. Why not share this now? If you just finished listening to it, share it with one of your friends. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or rate us on Spotify out of 5 stars. We're also on a platform called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can check out little outtakes and snippets. Free of charge. Just go to buymeacoffee.com, look for a creator called Running Book Reviews, and you can check out the various bits and bobs there. And you'll probably get prompted to buy us a coffee as well. Feel free if you want to. That's all for today from Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
Bye.